Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today is musician, author, co-host of the Bat Fan Addict podcast, and host of the Take 92 podcast, Sammy Warm Hands. Sammy, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
This is really cool. You have been working on this new album for a couple years now.
Yes.
And it's intense. It's punk rock music. You are somebody that does a lot of different music. If anybody knows your work, you have a plethora of hip hop music, punk rock music. You've also done some just acoustic guitar cover songs and originals and all kinds of stuff. Probably one of the most broad and extensive catalogs definitely in Lane County, but maybe anywhere. So it's always a treat to talk to you because I think you have a vast knowledge about making music of many different genres, but you do it well. It's impressive because there's a lot of people that combine hip hop and punk nowadays, but you kind of keep them separate and you do them both really well. So it's kind of great.
Yeah, I think they have like a kindred spirit for sure, but I don't really try to do like a mashup thing. You know, they're two things that I love deeply, kind of independent of each other. But it's cool because, you know, anytime that I come back, we can talk about something completely different than the last time I was on. You know?
Yeah, this is, I think, the third time. The first time was really just about your music. And anytime that's the first time I have a guest on, it's kind of like to introduce to my audience, you know. And then the second time we talked about your book, and which is really cool, talking about stories from the road and touring. And well, you know, you're not touring as much, but you are doing a show in Eugene. You just did one in Portland, so that we'll talk about that at the end.
Yep.
But that's a big deal, you know, to be doing live shows again after this. You know, everyone says after COVID, we're still in the thick of it, but definitely starting to kind of learn to live with it, you know. Before we get started, I want to mention that if you'd like to donate to the show, you can go to PayPal or Patreon, or you can go to STRPOD.com and donate to PayPal or Patreon. That's how you become a monthly sponsor. Or if you'd like to make a quick donation, you can go to Venmo and you just @SpentTheRent and make a quick donation. And the money goes to, I'm trying to start advertising and reaching a bigger audience. I've kind of built my small community of guests, past guests, and then their friends. And now I'd like to broaden it and to try to reach a bigger audience. So I need help with donations to make that happen with sponsorships and advertising. So Sammy Warm Hands, the band is called Dead Fucking Serious, DFS on Facebook. It's DFS Punk. There'll be links in the show notes.
Yeah, they deleted our page after years of letting us have it and growing our following. They decided out of nowhere. I didn't even realize it happened until I went to promote the new record and it was just gone. So yeah, but Instagram is what we use mostly at Dead Fucking Serious.
Yeah. So the new album is called Klandemic. And it's a pretty intense imagery on the album cover. The album covers a COVID mask wearing Jesus on a crucifix adorned with MAGA hats and then Klan hoods in the backdrop. I was going to have a picture of it. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's pretty intense and it's interesting. I mean, the Klan hoods are subtle if you don't look deep into it.
Yeah, it's not something you would necessarily notice if you stream your music, but if you have the real thing, it's definitely all over.
Yeah. And so it's pretty intense imagery. Tell me what the motivation was to create this album.
Well, we were on hiatus. So in 2019, we put out our album Peril. And as we were booking that tour, we found out that our drummer, Kellen Holte, was expecting his first child. And so it was like, all right, well, we got to shorten the tour and, you know, go on break for a year. And so of course everyone winds up going on break for a year because the pandemic started. And when that happened, I sort of just watched as like each of my friends and family would be like, oh, my work closed, they sent me home. Oh, my work closed, they sent me home. Right. And I'm like, okay, I'm next, right? And it turned out the job that I had was now considered an essential worker. And so what I experienced to me was very traumatic because I already had some like undiagnosed OCD going on. But when that happened, it was like you're shaking when you're eating your cereal every morning. You feel like you're going to throw up, just because you have to leave the house into this unknown, and you're hearing all these stories about people dying. And so in March 2020, I wrote the first song on the album called Panecdote, and it's just all of those fears and concerns and projections, predictions, all of those things wrapped into a song that's about 5 times the length of one of our typical songs. So it was just one of the craziest periods in my whole life, and I had so much to get off my chest that it just came out. And throughout the year of insanity that was 2020, I kept writing and writing and developed a full album.
Yeah, so the song Panecdote for the audio version of this podcast, we will be playing it at the end. For the video, I'm really not allowed to play music because of copyright reasons on YouTube and Facebook. They get stupid with it. So as you see below you, anyone watching this, take92.com is where you can listen to the full album. And then also, like I said, on the audio of this podcast, you'll be able to check it out. And we'll talk about that as we go along too.
And if you're here on YouTube, on my channel, you can just type Dead Fucking Serious Panecdote, and there's a lyric video for the whole song.
Nice. It's a good one, and it is very long, because a lot of times this is a punk album. Most of your songs are a couple minutes long.
No, not even. Our average, I actually did like a breakdown, and the average DFS song is 45 seconds. Yeah. And this song is nearly 5 minutes.
So. Yeah, it's a good one. So we'll be playing that at the end for the audio guests, and I'll remind everybody how to find it if you're watching this. So now I want to talk about Klandemic and what it means. The Urban Dictionary definition for Klandemic is an exponential spread of white supremacy in a community. That's what it said on Urban Dictionary.
That's wild. Yeah, I didn't even know that had been used elsewhere. But for me, I had thought of the image, because Winston Smith from San Francisco, he's a collage artist, and he's done, I don't know if you can see this tape. He did our first full-length album, Squalor. He did our second full-length album, Peril. They're all hand-cut collages. The last one was a big anti-violence record, so it's all like the letters are made of cut-up guns, and it's overlaid over all these bullets. And then the new one, he has a classic album. He did a bunch for the Dead Kennedys in the 80s, and one of them was this basic format. The cross was made of dollar bills, and it was this golden, like he calls it, bowling trophy Jesus, and the background was barcodes, and the record was called In God We Trust Incorporated. And so it's one of the most famous punk rock albums. It's one of my favorite punk rock album covers. And as we were developing the songs, and I'm doing this alone. I didn't have my drummer to bounce ideas off of this time. You can't get together with anyone during this time in 2020 while I'm writing. And so as the concept is starting to take hold, I thought of that image, and I hit up Winston and I was like, yo, what do you think of this? And I had like a crude Photoshop, like, hey, what do you think of this? Because to me, there's a lot of symbolism, and like he was talking about false idols and consumerism and sort of the televangelist era, right? Because that's what was happening in the early 80s, the Falwells and Reagan and all that. And in this, I thought, you take this compassionate figure, right? So Christ would be the first person to make a sacrifice. I mean, that's the whole metaphor here, right? Is that he would sacrifice to help others, and so he's going to put on his mask, and so had that on there. And meanwhile, the people who worship him, in theory, are actually the biggest demographic of Trump supporters, right? And so there's already a little bit of a juxtaposition there, a contrast in ideals, right? And then I've written about this in even my rap music, sort of the history behind it. You have the David Dukes and Don Blacks from the actual Klan saying like, oh, Tucker Carlson is our as our savior. You know, he's normalizing this stuff into politics. There's no scary hoods. You know, it's like when Chuck D said, now the KKK wears 3-piece suits, right? That was 30 years ago. Yeah. And now we're seeing what some might have thought was reactionary or hyperbolic. No, you're actually seeing that literally, that people who ran the Klan are endorsing candidates that have run the whole country and become completely normalized. And so the title came with it around the same time, and there's a title track where I talk about the spread of a virus. And throughout the course of the song, you realize that the virus is fascism, racism, misinformation, all of these things that are wrapped up in this shifting tide that we've been a part of for the last 5 years.
Yeah, punk rock is often completely misunderstood. And to me, the art actually, what it really just, it's pretty simple. What it means is that you just don't care what anyone else thinks, that you're going to do things your own way. And so often it's anti-establishment, but more specifically, like you mentioned, anti-fascist.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I just think that there's a lot said about what is or isn't punk, or if you do something for the sake of shock value, you know. And we had a lot of conversations behind the scenes about the last album, Peril, for example, because my initial reaction was like, you know, I always think back to Vietnam and like what got the war to change, what galvanized the protesters, right? It was seeing the actuality of what happened. You know, we didn't see that with Iraq and Afghanistan. That's why we're there so fucking long. You know, if you see the actual horror. And so I wanted to put up, like there was a trend of on Twitter, all of these doctors and nurses in emergency rooms were posting after, I don't know if I think it was after Parkland, the shooting in Florida. They were posting all the blood-soaked, you know, ruins of their operating table and all over the floor and all over their clothes and all this shit. And I wanted to put up something really horrific like that. And we thought, well, what is a way that isn't just shock value, that isn't exploitative of the victims, but gets you to think, you know, makes you pause for a moment. And so this to me is one of those. Like maybe at first glance, I don't know what someone's reaction would be to it, but I mean, I told you off air, we've had problems with the distributor, we had problems with the manufacturer. You know, it's definitely striking, but it's the kind of thing that you want people to think about and to talk about, because we wouldn't be singing about this shit if it didn't mean something to us on a very deep level.
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing, you know, I think it would be, we have to talk about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, you know, and how, and these kind of things in music, a lot of times you'll have in punk rock, all the way classic rock, all music has been, there's two types of music. There's love songs and protest songs, in my opinion. And so, you know, punk rock, a lot of stuff that was talked about 30 years ago is now mainstream. And then you get people, talking heads and whatnot, like, I can't believe nobody's been talking about this. I'm like, oh my God, maybe you should look past the offensive album cover and listen to its content.
Yeah, well, and that's
a call to action.
When we had the issue with the distributor not wanting to put out the record, I explained to them the history of the album cover and Winston Smith and Dead Kennedys, right? And I said, and what is the most famous song on that Dead Kennedys EP? Nazi Punks Fuck Off. So, you know, there's an anti-racist, anti-fascist history here that runs through all of it. Like, you can look at anything I've put out since I was in high school till now and take the same, you know, anti-racist, anti-violent messages from it. So, like, there's no way that this could be misinterpreted if anyone thought for 2 seconds about who was saying it, you know, who was putting up this image, and what do you think that intent is? You know, there's plenty of precedent here.
So let's talk a little bit about, I mean, genres of music get goofy, but there's so many sub genres in punk rock, and I'm not even necessarily sure if I'm interested. But Dead Fucking Serious is pretty traditional. You know, I mean, it's heavy, fast, pretty angry. You know, the the anger, like you had kind of alluded to earlier, stems from frustrations and like the changes in our society. Would you say that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I consider DFS hardcore punk. You know, we don't quite belong with the hardcore kids, and we don't quite belong with the straight up punk rockers. But it's straightforward riffs and ideas presented in a very unorthodox way. Arrangement is really, really important to us. If you listen to even the shortest songs, they move in unconventional ways. You know, we don't play the thing 8 times. We play it like 3.5 times, and we do that for 1.5 times. And, you know, it keeps you guessing, keeps you moving. And in terms of the anger and the message, you know, with hip hop, you and I have talked about how great it is that you have this huge blank canvas to explore a topic with your words, and you can go in so much depth and detail, right? And with hardcore, I feel so satisfied being able to distill some primal, deep fear or anger or sadness or grief or something like that into a 30-second song or something that helps you just exercise that pain, get that out of your system, you know? And so to me, there's a great catharsis in this band. And in all sincerity, you know, when people talk about, you know, things being too much or whatever, I'd be like, start a punk band. Just go and yell about the things that are upsetting you. You'll feel better. By the time it's over, you'll be so tired. You're like, okay, I'm relaxed now. You know?
Right. And I think that people don't understand that when they don't listen to the genre, that's what the audience gets to share with the artists, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, they really get to, I mean, we both are huge fans of NoFX. Yes. Sometimes I wonder, I did learn from them, from the lyrics, from the attitude of like, just have fun, live your life, because all these outside stresses are always going to get worse. It feels like, you know, so you just have to like find your lane. But yeah, and it's also, you know, watching Fat Mike, he's a train wreck because he's a conflicted person. So as I've gotten older, I've got different feelings towards it too. But I'm grateful to find that music. Propaganda is a good example as well.
Yeah.
Where it's just so, and it's so like they found a way to make social justice warrior music, but to make it sound tough, you know, and it's such a fine line because a lot of times it sounds whiny or whatever with that kind of music. But
well, yeah, they're continuing that tradition of what Biafra did in the Dead Kennedys. You know, they're using a lot of satire and irony and stuff in their lyrics, and you know, the way that it's sort of a takedown without being just a, you know, us versus them sort of setup in your lyric, you know. And speaking of NoFX, you know, I've covered The Decline numerous times, their big, you know, magnum opus, and that was a big influence in, thanks Thomas, that was a big influence in the opening song Panecdote. Is kind of our version of The Decline in that it has you know, verse chorus elements and callbacks throughout it, but it has these deep peaks and valleys and long extended bridges and really interesting musical movements that don't conform to regular song structure. So yeah, they're a huge influence on me.
Oh yeah, it's, I mean, and you've done a cover of NoFX The Decline. It's awesome. So anybody that's interested, go to your YouTube channel. You know, it's just Sammy Warm Hands.
Yeah, just Sammy Warm Hands, and look up they go all the way back to 2009. I've done it a few times, but the new one that came out this year is much better. It's with my friend the punk cellist and punk rockette, who did they both just brought it to a whole other level.
So I want to talk a little bit. First of all, before I move on, I want to remind people, I'm going to say it a bunch. Take92.com is where you're going to find the album Klandemic. You can buy a digital copy. You can buy a CD. There's a lot of merch. There was skateboards available. I think there's maybe one left. They're $60. They're amazing skate decks. I kind of want to buy one, but I don't know if, you know, and the show, if it hasn't sold, you'll have it at the show. We'll talk about the show, but before I go,
we're playing on Thursday,
June 30th, June 30th. Where's that at?
John Henry's here in Eugene.
It's new John Henry's, yeah.
Opening for Negative Approach. So
we'll mention that again, because we're going to talk a little bit about live performance and what the Portland show meant and getting out and how that was. But before, I want to kind of ask you about something kind of interesting that's happening in mainstream music, really with Machine Gun Kelly, that you know, I've always been a fan of pop punk bands like Green Day, Blink-182, and then probably more underground bands like NoFX, Bad Religion, Propaganda. But it seems like there's an attempt at a comeback to mainstream artists like Machine Gun Kelly, granted for a different generation. But what are your thoughts on this movement to bring the sound back to more audiences? Because sometimes it can open the door where underground artists then get found because there's people that are like, I like this punk rock music or whatever it is. I need to find more, you know? So what are your thoughts on it? I mean, Machine Gun Kelly, before you get into it, the music backing him, the Travis Barker, I like it. I do. I dig it. And at first I was like, I'm going to give this a chance. And then I listened to the lyrics. I'm like, this is whack. Like, this is just about him, like whining. It's not about anything. But what are your thoughts?
It's a lot about drugs is what it is. But yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on it because, yeah, you're right. Anytime you get a resurgence in a style of music like that, it's going to inspire people. And that's fantastic. You know, that's great. Personally, you know, like my mom bought me that CD. Like, I bet, come on, it's Travis Barker. You'll like it. You know, like, one, I think it's hilarious that Eminem roasted this dude so bad that he just put away the microphone and had to just make a different style of music. That's funny to me. Two, it's sort of got the Lil Wayne effect. Like, you know, when he was trying to, like, pretending to play guitar on stage, but not actually doing it. Because if you read the liner notes in the CD, she bought it for me. I did. It's like all session players. He doesn't play on almost any of the songs, and yet he's in the music videos strumming along like he did play on the songs, and he didn't. And that was always a thing for me when I was coming up as a kid. You know, it's like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney Spears or whatever was the big thing when I'm getting into punk rock, and I was like, these motherfuckers don't write their own songs. They don't play their own instruments. Like, what is the appeal? What are you guys connecting with here? And so I feel a little bit like it's just artificial, not to just keep being negative, but it's just to be honest. I mean, I love Travis Barker's music. I love Blink. I love the Transplants. I love the stuff that he's done with Goldfinger. And yet he has, in my opinion, like the worst taste in rap music. Like, we couldn't be more opposites on the rappers that he's worked with. And so him bringing sort of that element lyrically to pop punk doesn't do anything for me. And and it's sort of got the, like, you know, and I love a lot of what John Feldman has done as a producer. He's the singer from Goldfinger, but it's also become this sort of like really auto-tuned, really like, you know, beat replaced, manipulated kind of music. And so it's just got a lot of characteristics that I don't like. If it does lead somebody back to the Descendants and Green Day or something, then fantastic. But like on the surface, it's something I think I put on the record 1 or 2 times and was like, I can't. It's not for me. You know, like Avril Lavigne is having a big moment right now. On tour with this guy as like some pop punk queen, when like the reality was I bought that record. She had 1 or 2 songs on that first record that were like Skater Boy and whatever, that were like pop punk songs. And the rest of it was actually this kind of nice singer-songwriter melodic pop that was great. And
I enjoyed it too, but it's not punk at all.
Yeah, and she had some great lyrics and some great hooks on it, and yet everyone remembers her for like the one video. And so it's weird. It's like she's made these other kinds of music, these other adjacent pop singer-songwriter things all these years, and now is having this weird like pop punk resurgence with Machine Gun Kelly. And it was like, I don't get 40, how you are the face of this, but I mean, like, good for you. I want you to be successful. I mean, but like,
she made music for Dawson, for like, she made one song that said skater in it, and then she made music for shows like Dawson's Creek. You know? So it was kind of, it's funny, but yeah, they have this tour, and I'm happy about the concept of anybody going in that direction. I thought many times over with the election of Donald Trump, with I mean, I thought that there'd be a resurgence of like pop punk, you know, punk rock music in the mainstream. And I mean, everything is so click based and stuff. It's different so much, because a lot of what made punk rock so great was its obscurity, is that you had to know, like, you only know if you know, kind of thing. It's not like it was going to be put in front of you a bunch of times. You know, it was like something that was kind of passed around behind the scenes, you know, and then you had to go to the shows to learn about new bands and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's just anytime that there's an opportunity for it to hit the mainstream again, I'm kind of like at least willing to give it a chance. But
yeah, I mean, those are all good things. And I don't want to come off as some kind of purist. I just, if you're asked my personal opinion, there are a lot of like aesthetic choices that just don't resonate with me. Right. And so that's the biggest thing. You know, I'm not gonna like shit on anybody who does like it. It's that's not gonna be my go-to. You know?
Right.
Like, yeah, I'd rather listen to the new Less Than Jake or the new Goldfinger or the, you know, like all these bands who are still doing that music exceptionally well now.
Right. So now live performance, you had previously talked about kind of basically retiring from at least national touring.
Yeah.
You had said that you would, you know, be open to some shows in the Northwest. This new album being something that you're super proud of. I know that you kind of were like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a couple shows. So you had a show, record release show up in Portland, and then an upcoming show in Eugene, Thursday, the 30th. And we'll talk about that in a second. Tell me about the Portland show. What was that all about?
Oh, it was amazing. My goal for the record, because one, I don't want to do those, you know, little ass headlining tours anymore. And two, it was not even clear that I would be able to get our original drummer for a show or anything, because he's still full-time dad. He didn't even play on the record. We invited our friend Mike to fill in from Death by Stereo. And so, well, I really didn't know when the album was done if there would be a performance. And so my goal was, okay, what if there's a way to get a couple like good opening slots where there's a little more of a built-in crowd, right? We can cover the same number of people in, you know, a small handful of shows instead of going out there for weeks and, you know, playing for 20 people at a time or something. And so luckily that occurred through luck. We were invited by Trevor Riley from O Wilhelm Scream, one of our very favorite bands. They just released a new album, and he had been a podcast guest twice on my show, the Take 92 podcast. And so he invited us to open the show in Portland. And then this other show we've got coming up this week is another one where we were invited by the promoter. And it was like, hey, are you guys accepting shows? Because anybody who books shows in Eugene for the last, I don't know, 7 to 10 years would know that if you reach out to us and say, hey, I got a show, blah, 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 we just be like, no, sorry. Because usually it was just me and Kellen, and we would hire a different bass player when we would do a tour. And so we never had like a functioning lineup. So right now, playing these two shows with, you know, the first one being a band that we've listened to for almost 20 years. And it's all three longtime members of the band since 2006. It's me, Ben Polanski on bass, and Kellen Holte on drums. And it was a magic feeling to get in a room with all those dudes and play these songs. And we got an incredible response at that show. You know, it was a great turnout. Every person in the room, every person on the bill all came up to us and showed love. You know, it was our biggest release day just in terms of like what we sold. Wow. You know, I felt a lot of love and validation because, you know, like I said, Facebook deletes your page. You're trying to share your new record and it's not getting out to anyone. You know, you get 10 likes or something and nobody hears it. And so it's like, oh man, what a bummer. Like no one's even going to hear this milestone record in my life, you know, that I feel is the pinnacle of what I've been trying to do for 25 years in this kind of music. And, you know, you get all that love from all those people. It's like, okay, a reminder. Social media is not real life. We made a real connection here. And I'm excited to share it with folks here in our hometown. You know, we haven't played a hometown show since 2019.
I haven't been to the new John Henry's. I turn into a pumpkin at like 9 p.m. on weeknights, so we'll see if I can make it through. What time does the show start?
Doors are at 8 and music's at 9. There's only 3 acts, so it won't be a long, late show.
Right. So it's at John Henry's Thursday, July 30th, June
June, yeah.
Thursday, June 30th. And so it's, you know, the Klandemic record release show for the band Dead Fucking Serious. My guest is Sammy Warm Hands. Before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to James Barber of Oregon Cashflow Pro. He's been behind the scenes, my biggest sponsor since the beginning, since he was the first person to offer me one before I even thought I could ask for one.
Nice.
And I want to say thank you to all my sponsors, individuals and businesses. I've got a handful, but I need more for advertising. So if you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can go to STRPOD.com. And now you can order stickers and magnets on the website. If you order a magnet, I'll throw in a sticker. I'm full disclosure, the description I've said straight up, like, this is a cheaply made promotional material, but it's what helps me grow the project. So if you donate, you get a sticker or a magnet. So you can go to strpod.com, and then in the drop down, there's a shop you can click on. And I'm working on shirts and some other stuff. Sammy Warm Hands, I appreciate it so much. I'm a fan of your work. I love that you are able to do both genres so well. I think that anyone that's never listened to your music should go check out your YouTube channel, because there's just so much. So Sammy Warm Hands on YouTube. And then, yeah, go to the show, guys. It's Thursday, June 30th at the new John Henry's. And so where is the new John Henry? It's like just around the corner.
Yeah, it's very close to the old one. I haven't been inside yet, but I saw a photo of it. I think it's right over there by the Broadway Metro.
Yeah. And so, I mean, John Henry's has been a staple for both hip hop and punk rock for forever, and it disappeared.
Yeah.
You know, it's where the Drake, I think, is what it's called now. And then, you know, there's a lot behind that. We can talk about that at a different time.
Yeah, I was just barely too young. You know, we would play all ages shows with friends' bands in high school, and those guys were in their 20s, and they would be playing shows at places like John Henry's, and, you know, we could never get in. And then that place closed, and years later, when I'm doing rap stuff with the Illusionists, we played a million shows at the second John Henry's, and that was one of our very favorite places. Like, I was really heartbroken when that was just gutted and turned into a, you know, sterile looking sports bar.
Right, it got turned into Machine Gun Kelly of venues.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So full circle. So hey, Sammy Warm Hands, thank you so much. For the video listeners, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, go to take92.com to listen to the song Panecdote. Thank you so much for doing this. Yeah,